Thank you so much, Ashton, for being here. I am really excited to be speaking with you. You want to start by taking just a couple of seconds to share with us exactly what you do?
Yeah, so I founded my business Mind's Eye Creative a few years back. I've been doing live illustration, graphic recording work for almost 10 years now, which is pretty wild to think about. And yeah, more importantly, I'm a mom of three little kids, ages 5 to 10, and I live in the woods in the middle of nowhere in Canada.
And
So
that's so
yeah.
much fun. I was like thinking like, hey, like it's cool. Like your kids are probably back in school now, right?
They got in yesterday. So yeah. So I'm like booked solid for next 2 weeks because just I really wanted to take some time off this summer because I'm really bad at taking time off. So now I'm regretting it a little bit. Yesterday was their first day back, and now I'm a little frazzled, but it's all good. It's all
But did you
good
at least
stuff. I
enjoy your
can't
break?
complain. I did. We had some little mini vacations, and there's just a lake down the road that we spent almost every day at. So it was great. Yeah,
So
it's
much fun.
awesome.
If you live like really rural, then like, do you have a school near you, or like, how does it work?
It's like a 15-minute drive, but it's a
Okay.
small school.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really sweet. They're pretty jazzed. That's always the worry is like, are they happy with their classroom and who's in there and their teachers? So they came home yesterday very happy. So I'm happy. Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Okay. So,
Yeah.
before we get into like how you actually built your business, you want to share with
Mm.
us like what is like unique or special about like how you run your marketing and like that what you do?
Yeah, so there's an education element to what I do. So I have to educate people on why they should hire me. So it's an extra step, I feel, than like maybe most people who know they just need to hire a website designer. They just know they need to hire a photographer. Like you're like, those are like no-brainer choices. You're like, oh, I know I need these things. But I have that extra step of having to educate while I'm in the selling process. And I had someone at a conference a few years back for folks like myself, some professional development. And he said, my work is an experienced good. You have to truly experience it for yourself to understand the value of it. So that's another element. You have to educate people on the value of it. But if even better if they could experience it for themselves. So if they're in a room and I'm at this giant piece of paper capturing and drawing, and they're like, what is she doing? And then at the end, there's this like large and in charge visual representation of what was just said. Even if they can't articulate why it resonates with them, they know that it does, right? So then I can step in and kind of speak to why it might have resonated with them, why they liked it so much. So it's definitely an easier sell when people have the opportunity to experience it for themselves.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm like totally with you on it on the education part, as in like what I do with like the brain is like everyone knows, like you said, like you need a photographer for your branding pictures, or maybe you need a social media manager, but like it's fun. It's part of the challenge of the business, like getting creative to find more ways for people to experience it and to really understand the full value. Let's get into how you are able to do that. But what made you decide to go down this path and choose this very unique niche?
Yeah, so I always thought I wanted to be a teacher. And at the time when I was exiting high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to get into a lot of student loan debt. And I didn't want to get into a university where I was going to have all this loan with like no plan. So I decided to go to community college and take early childhood education because I knew at one point I wanted to be a mother. That was like the only goal I had in life at that point in time. Like I would have totally been happy as a teen mom, just saying. Like I probably would have loved it. Everyone's like, what? No. And I'm like, no, like I knew being a mother was something I always wanted
Shame
to do.
that's like one goal that like you once you miss the deadline, it's too late. Like most things these days, like people think like, oh, they can't be like Olympian or whatever, and you could do it at really old, but like a teen mom.
Yeah, I know. So I did have kids when I was in my later 20s. I waited a bit, but I remember at 19, I was like, yeah, I'd be happy if I had a baby right now. Because I didn't really like, I knew I wanted to be a mom, but I didn't have any other like career aspirations. And like I said, I thought about being a teacher, but at the time, here anyways, I don't know what it was like across North America. There was a lot of teachers graduating and no jobs. So I was like, I'm not going to university and spending all this money and then not being able to get a job at the end of it. So I decided to go the early childhood education route because I was like, well, I'll look after kids until I have my own. That was sort of the goal. So I started doing that, and I got a job at a family center, a nonprofit family center, and I was there for a few years. And the last few years I was there, I transitioned to a role as a facilitator. And facilitation is awesome because you're like teaching, but not. You don't have to actually know anything. So you manage the group, you hear what they're saying, you're feeding back what they're saying. It's really about the wisdom that's coming out of that group itself. You're just, asking the right questions and navigating it, making sure people feel heard and honored in what they're saying. And I really, really fell in love with that kind of group process stuff. And then after doing that for a couple of years, I moved back home. I didn't know what I was going to do. I left that job because it was too far to drive there, blah, blah, blah. And one day, a friend of mine told me about this one-day workshop called graphic facilitation. And I was like, what is that? And basically, I went there and the rest is history. Like, I went to that one-day workshop back in late 2013 because I remember very clearly because my first child was only 6 months old and it was like the longest I'd left her for a whole day. It was a big deal. And I drive to the city to go to this workshop. And I'd always been very, very creative. I called myself like a dabbler, like name an art medium or supplies, and I've probably tried it. But I've never really taken any formal art training or anything, but I've always, in the back of my mind, I always like, oh, it'd be so cool to be some sort of artist. But I didn't even consider it because there's such a rhetoric and narrative in my life and community around you can't make money as an artist. Oh, ha ha ha, all those kids going to art school and they're going to graduate and like they're not going to have any money and they won't have any jobs and like would make fun of the kids that go to art school. So I didn't even cross my mind as an option, to be honest with you. I was like, well, no, like it wasn't even consideration. So anyways, this beautiful coming together of this like quiet dream of being an artist and this facilitator piece. So as a facilitator, you really have to be basically a professional listener and a thinker. And that was, I was able to kind of hone those skills really well and jump right into graphic facilitation. I just had to beef up my drawing skills. So, and being able to learn how to like write and draw very, very, very fast. So it was just sort of this beautiful blend. And the first few years, I sort of played around with it, did a little bit here and there. I had a facilitator friend of mine who was
Hold on,
very supportive.
you want to just stop for a second and like
Yeah,
explain to
sure.
someone who doesn't know what a graphic facilitator is. Like, I'm assuming, like, it's the first time I'm hearing this, but like, I'm assuming that like while you're in the room, you're drawing pictures of whatever they're saying, trying to bring all their ideas together in this big, nice, beautiful map or graphic or something.
Yeah. So there's sort of like, of course, a lot of people, they're pre-COVID and they're post-COVID life. So my pre-COVID life, I was 100% in person. I was traveling all over North America, into Europe a little bit. And I would show up with my giant rolls of paper and my big boards and my big fancy markers and literally be drawing them out. So just for context for folks, like a lot of times one graphic would be like 3 or 4 feet wide by like 6 to 8 feet long. And I would create sometimes many of these during a day. So you can imagine like at a conference, you're walking down the hallway and there's just like the walls just lined with these giant illustrations. So there's
What
sort of,
sort of people, like what sort of situation would people need this for?
I do a lot of conferences. So there'd be like multiple speakers during the day and I would be creating one graphic per one. So that's sort of what I call like the live illustration graphic recording world. And then the graphic facilitation world is more of that facilitated process. So it might be like, you're bringing together the executives and you're creating your strategic direction for the next 3 years or 6 months or whatever. And then I'd be in there listening to everybody rather than just one speaker at a conference. So the sort of the two main worlds. And then now post COVID, I had to move everything online. So I have been doing some in person, but primarily have been doing a lot online. So instead of like seeing me here, you actually see my drawing screen, and it would be live. Often it's live in real time during an online meeting or session or conference and things like that. And sometimes I do like hybrid. So maybe half folks are online, half folks are in person, and then they just take my Zoom screen and like put it on screens in the room. So it's like I'm there, which is really beautiful too, which is
So
fun.
much fun. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
So take us back to like what you were saying before. So you took this course or this workshop. I forgot exactly the word that you used. And now you started working on it right away. Like how did that go from there into your business?
Yeah, so I had been facilitating a group at the time with some young adults, and it was literally the next day I was facilitating this group after I had taken this workshop, or maybe it was like the next week. It was very shortly after, and I had gotten some large paper, and I literally just threw it on the wall, and I was like, I just took this workshop and I don't really know what I'm doing, and it was a very supportive group, and I just drew it and I was like, I don't know. And I put it away for a little while, like a couple weeks or a few months or so. And I took it out and looked at it again. And I was just blown away at how much I could remember, even beyond what I captured, and just the little nuance and details of things. And I was like, wow, this is really powerful stuff. Like, this isn't just like oh, that's a cute drawing thing that someone did. Like, there's something here. Like, there's something powerful about how I just remembered all this information. Whereas if I didn't have a visual tool or like a capture from one of our previous meetings that we had done, because we'd met like once a week for months at a time, like I don't remember what happened in those other sessions, but I remember so much this one session because I had this drawing. So that's sort of when I was like, okay, there is something not just like cutesy about this. Like, there's something powerful about this type of way of capturing information. So it was at that point that I started kind of diving into some things and finding opportunities to practice. And I was really involved in my community at the time, and I volunteered more than I worked. And so I would like seek out opportunities, and I would just say, hey, can I just like bring my paper? And they're like, sure. And I'm pretty well known. It's a small town, right? So you kind of know a lot of people, and they're like, oh yeah, just Ashton doing her weird thing. And so that was great. And like I was about to say earlier, I had a facilitator friend, and he was really supportive of this work and got me in on a few of his contracts so I could start getting paid for some of this stuff. And it was very, very slow going for those first few years. And then when I was pregnant with my second child in the summer of 2015, I attended the International Forum for Visual Practitioners Conference, and I actually applied for a scholarship, and I got that, which paid for half of my conference fees because I had like no money at the time. So I was like, okay, I just have to come up with like the flights and all that stuff to try to get to this conference. And it's graphic recorders, graphic facilitators from all over the world coming together in one spot once a year. And of course, I went to that conference and was like totally like intimidated, but inspired, like very blown away. Some of these people in their room have been doing it for like 20 years, right? So, and I purposely sort of went with this notion, I want to lead this conference make a decision. Am I going to do this, or like just kind of on the side for fun when people ask me, or I'm going to go all in? Obviously, you know the answer to that question now. But at that conference I attended, I had a couple like business workshops and things like that. So I attended those and really put, when I got back after my child was born and a few months after, that's when I was like, okay, I'm ready to like actually build a business around this. So it was really late 2016, early 2017. So about like 3 years of just sort of like doing a little bit here and there and practicing and educating myself. And at that time, I sort of felt like I had a secret business. So like I kind of had a business, but not really. And because I think it was 2015 when I decided my business name. I'm trying to remember timeline here, but so I was 2 years in that and there, or maybe it was 2014. Yeah, but it was basically a secret business because I wasn't like promoting myself. I wasn't marketing. I was just sort of doing really small pieces of work. And it was late 2016, early 2017 that I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to figure out how to build a business around this.
So looking back, what was one, and I don't think like the only, but like one of the key actions that you had to take at that time when you said you're going all in to really help it become a business?
Um, Maybe this is I don't know, a silly answer, but honestly, I just had to start talking about it. Like, I just had to tell people I was open for business. Like, it sounds ridiculous to say, but I just had to come out behind the curtain and not have a secret business anymore. I had to just talk about it. And I started reaching out to conferences because I felt like conferences might be an easier sell than like facilitation type things.
What do you
So
prefer doing now?
I like both. It kind of depends on the client, but I like both for their
It's
own
an honest
reasons.
answer. I like it.
Yeah. Like I have a client and they like keep me well fed and they like cybersecurity and their conferences and I love them. They are like my people. I love them. They're like always like, this is amazing. Everything I do. They sometimes I have to find the typos or the spelling errors. Like they're just like, whatever, it's amazing. And like they're great. But I do like facilitated type sessions. They're way more challenging. They're harder to do. But I find them a little bit more rewarding than a conference. Like sometimes I've been in situations where people like will come up to me and say like, I've never felt heard before. Like, this was worth my time to be here today. Like, so I get myself into these situations sometimes where it's like really a true honor to be there to capture their voice when sometimes their voice isn't heard. Right.
Oh, I
So
love
it's
that.
like, yeah. So it's very like, precious to me and I have to like honor that. And sometimes I find myself in situations where people aren't happy to be there or they are like afraid it's going to be a waste of their time and they say that or it's a difficult conversation like you're gathering information from people to like then share back as a third party with the like management and sometimes like it's disgruntled people complaining about stuff but I'm like it is what it is. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, as like I do completely different work, but and the official title is like mediator, which is not the same as a facilitator, but when you're doing it together in a group of 6 in the way I run my client sessions, then like there's a lot of facilitation that needs to go on. Like I don't do teaching the
Yes.
way most people think. It's like just asking some questions, but mostly letting them talk. So I really resonating with what you're
Yeah.
saying. And like just like from
Yeah.
the brain and like the science part of like why the images work so well and like how like you were saying you were able to help to remember all the information so many months later like is so awesome. But I want to go for a minute into what you were saying right in the beginning about the education part. What would you advise to anyone else who's listening to this who their business also requires education or experiencing? What could they do to get more people to like get more people's hands on it?
Yeah, so I think I definitely didn't do this in the beginning, but I learned after time and trial and error, you have to explain it in a way that they're going to understand it. So, I started calling what I do live illustration more than graphic recording because it's a friendlier way to explain it. People can think of it's live and she's illustrating, like click, click. Graphic recording, they're like, what are you, like a courtroom artist? What are you recording? Like audio? Like, what are you doing? Even graphic facilitation, I find is not as much of a friendly term if you're not familiar with the facilitation world, so like I said, I've been using the last probably 2 years ish more like live illustrator because I find we want to feel professional. So we use industry terms. And in my industry, we use even a lot of people use visual practitioner. Like, what the heck is a visual practitioner? Like, nobody understands what that means. Right. So we have to use language and words that people understand. And when I started reaching out to conferences, I worked really hard in like my pitch. And my pitch was very illustrative in words. So be like, I stand at a large whiteboard with markers drawing out what I am hearing. Like I'm trying to literally paint a picture of what it is that I do. So when they read it, they go, "Oh yeah, I can picture someone
Yeah.
drawing it." Like, I maybe have never seen it before, but I hear what they're saying and I can picture it in my mind. Whereas a lot of times and I find it can be even like overcompensating. Like I want to sound professional, so I need to be professional in all of my language and use industry terms. But really you're doing yourself a disservice. You need to like take a step back and like if you didn't know anything about this, how would you explain it to somebody in like the most basic terms possible? Um, and like I want to attract clients that like my friendly, easygoing, like fun
Yeah.
attitude, like personality. So I infuse that in how I communicate and how I talk. And in my email correspondence, like I'm not formal, like I'm like, hey, what's up? Like those are the type of people that I want to work with, and people who take things a little bit too seriously, I don't want to work with them anyway. So I'm not worried about being like
You
too
are
quote unquote.
picky. I love this.
I am very picky. I've been pretty brazen on phone calls lately. I'm just like, are you fun? Because I only work with fun people. And they're like, yeah, I think I'm fun. I think I'm fun.
Oh my God, I'm going to start using that. I am going to start using that. I love it. Like, I also
Yeah.
like that has honestly been one of my biggest struggles in like making it so simple for people to understand. For me, I
Yeah.
found personally the struggle for it was because I'm using the higher terminology all day long, like
Mm.
with other people and with people who know what I'm talking about. All of a sudden, speaking to someone who has no idea, it's like I feel like I have to like order it down like for a 2-year-old. Not really, but like they have no idea what you're talking about. And
Yeah.
so I feel you on that. And it's like way simpler now, and like it's forever going to be a thing in progress. Like I know, like I'm always going to find ways to make it simpler. So I appreciate you sharing that. Um, where can we find you and learn more about you? And if we're fun, get to be your clients.
Yeah, so I've kind of got two worlds right now. So I've got myself as the professional live illustrator, and that's mindseyeCreative.ca. Anything Mind's Eye Creative, you'll find me. And then I'm kind of on more of the other side these days, educating people on how to do visual note taking for themselves, so called sketchnoting. So you can find all of that information at www.sketchnote.school. And I've got a newsletter, and I just wrote a book and all that good stuff. So if you're interested in like, oh, this sounds kind of fun, maybe I want to do it for myself, you can go there and
Only
read
if you're a
all
fun
the.
person.
If you're fun, it'd be great. It'd be great to have you. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Ashton. I really enjoyed speaking with you today. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no problem.